Okay, so let's get started. So here's an overview of Aptis ESOL General. It's a 4 skills computer-based proficiency test spanning proficiency ranges from A1 to C on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the CEFR. It contains a variety of tasks that reflect real-life communicative situations. As Aptis was launched in 2012, it was developed based on the CEFR, which was published in 2001. All the content of the test is directly linked to and driven by the CEFR. Language tests that were created before 2001 needed to be retrospectively aligned to the CEFR. So this is a massive advantage in the test design of Aptis ESOL. Now, in terms of timing, Aptis ESOL General takes about 2 hours and 42 minutes to complete. And the grammar and vocabulary and reading and listening components are scored automatically within the computer delivery system, and trained human raters mark the speaking and writing components using an online rating system. One of the benefits of the Aptis testing system is that for each candidate's test, the speaking and writing components are divided by task and sent to different examiners to be marked. This improves the reliability of the results. All results are available in 48 hours and are provided in a scale score or numerical score and as a CEFR level for each language skill, listening, reading, speaking and writing. A final scale score or numerical score and overall CEFR level are also provided. Equality, diversity and inclusion support the range and breadth of cultural relations work that the British Council undertakes across our global network of offices. This, of course, extends to our Aptis ESOL suite of exams. We believe that different ages, ethnic and cultural groups, genders, sexual orientations, social economic statuses, and disabilities should be positively represented in our tests. This includes themes and questions, but also images used in our tests. In addition, our EDI policy means that special accommodations can be made for test takers who need them. For example, allowing extra time, a larger font, braille, a scribe, and so on, depending on the test taker's needs. Finally, Aptis ESOL General was developed by British Council experts and has been validated by extensive research, both internal and external. Okay, so candidates have to take all 5 test components to get a full profile across the language skills. The order of components is speaking, listening, the grammar and vocabulary or core component, reading, and then writing. So in a moment, we'll have a closer look at each of these components in this particular order. But first, let's have a quick look at the CEFR global scale, which describes what learners should be able to do at each level, broadly speaking. Okay, so at A1, learners can understand and use familiar everyday expressions and very basic phrases aimed at the satisfaction of needs of a concrete type. They can introduce themselves and others and ask and answer questions about personal details such as where they live, people they know, and things they have. They can interact in a simple way, provided that the other person talks slowly and clearly and is prepared to help. At A2 level, learners can understand sentences and frequently used expressions related to areas of most immediate relevance. For example, very basic personal and family information, shopping, local geography, employment, and they can communicate in simple and routine tasks requiring a simple and direct exchange of information on familiar and routine matters. They can also describe in simple terms aspects of their background, immediate environment, and matters in areas of immediate need. Moving on to B1 level, learners at this level can understand the main points of clear standard input on familiar matters regularly encountered in work, school, leisure, and so on. And they can deal with most situations likely to arise while traveling in an area where the language is spoken. They can produce simple connected text on topics which are familiar or of personal interest, and they can describe experiences and events, dreams, hopes and ambitions, and briefly give reasons and explanations for opinions and plans. Moving up to B2 level, learners can understand the main ideas of complex text on both concrete and abstract topics, including technical discussions in their field of specialization. Learners can interact with a degree of fluency and spontaneity that makes regular interaction with native speakers quite possible without strain for either party. They can provide clear, detailed text on a wide range of subjects and explain a viewpoint on a topical issue, given the advantages and disadvantages of various options. Moving up to C1 level, learners can understand a wide range of demanding, longer text and recognize implicit meaning. They can express themselves fluently and spontaneously without much obvious searching for expressions. They can use language flexibly and effectively for social, academic, and professional purposes. They can produce clear, well-structured, detailed text on complex subjects showing controlled use of organizational patterns, connectors, and cohesive devices. And the highest level, C2, learners at this level can understand with ease virtually everything heard or read. They can summarize information from different spoken and written sources, reconstructing arguments and accounts in a coherent presentation. They can express themselves spontaneously, very fluently and precisely, differentiating finer shades of meaning even in more complex situations. Okay, so that's the global scale, looking at the broad features at each level on the CEFR, and we'll see how that translates into test tasks now. Okay, so let's have a look at the Aptis ESOL general speaking component now. So here's an overview of the speaking component. As you can see, this part takes around 12 minutes, and there are 4 parts. The first of which is part 1, personal information. Part 2, learners have to describe, express opinion, and provide reasons and explanations. And part 3, describe, compare, and provide reasons and explanations. And part 4, discuss personal experience and opinion on an abstract topic. Let's have a closer look. So in speaking part 1, personal information, candidates are asked to answer 3 questions on personal topics. They are expected to talk for 30 seconds per question. It targets A1 on the CEFR and is designed to elicit short responses to spoken questions on familiar and concrete topics. Answers need to be intelligible or understandable. Moving on to speaking part 2, describe, express opinion, and provide reasons and explanation. In this part of the test, candidates are asked to describe a photo and then answer 2 questions related to the topic illustrated in the photo. Candidates have 45 seconds to respond to each question, and each question is presented one after the other. This part targets A2 on the CEFR, and the questions gradually increase in difficulty from description to opinion. Moving on to speaking part 3, describe, compare, and provide reasons and explanations. In this part of the test, candidates have to describe 2 contrasting pictures and answer 2 additional questions of increasing difficulty. They have 45 seconds for each response, and the questions are presented one after the other. This part targets B1 on the CEFR. Candidates need to be able to speak at length, compare and contrast, and support with reasoning and explanation, and also be able to speculate. Moving on to the next part, speaking part 4, discuss personal experience and opinion on an abstract topic. In this part, candidates again need to answer 3 questions, but this time they answer them all in one response. They have 1 minute to prepare a structured response, and they can make notes if they wish, which is highly recommended. A timer on the screen will show candidates how long they have left, and when the preparation time is over, the message appears at the bottom, "You now have 2 minutes to talk." Candidates should speak until the recording automatically stops after 2 minutes. This part targets B2 on the CEFR. Candidates need to be able to plan and deliver a coherent and cohesive long turn, which requires organization of longer spoken text and the ability to discuss abstract and unfamiliar topics. So that brings us to the end of the speaking component of the Aptis ESOL general test. Now let's have a look at the listening component. As you can see here, the listening component takes up to 40 minutes. It's important to mention that candidates can decide if they want to listen to each recording once or twice. They just need to click the play button a second time if they want the extra listen, the second listening or need it. Okay. As you can see, there are 4 parts. Part 1 being information recognition, Part 2 information matching, Part 3 opinion matching, and Part 4 monologue comprehension. Let's take a closer look. Okay, so in listening Part 1, information recognition, candidates listen to a short monologue or dialogue to identify short, specific pieces of information. So numbers, names, places, times, and so on. For each question, they have to listen and select the correct option from 3 possible options. Okay, there are questions at A1 level, A2 level, and B1 level in this part. Okay, so moving on to listening Part 2, information matching, candidates listen to 4 people's monologues and match the person to the information. Candidates have to match the 4 speakers with the best option from 6 options in a drop-down list. This task targets B1 on the CEFR. Candidates need to be able to identify key information and distinguish details. Notice how the tasks are becoming progressively more difficult. In listening Part 3, opinion matching, in this part, candidates listen to a dialogue between a man and a woman and then decide who expresses each opinion. There are 4 questions and candidates have to decide if the man, woman, or both the man and woman have expressed the opinion. At B2 level, candidates need to be able to integrate abstract ideas across a longer dialogue to identify and match the opinions to the speakers. This will involve construction of meaning, which involves applying world knowledge and inferencing strategies to cover anything which has been left unsaid by the speaker. This task also requires construction of discourse, which involves checking the relevance and applicability of what has been said to the previous parts of the message. Okay, so moving on to listening Part 4, monologue comprehension, which is another B2 level task. In this task, candidates listen to a monologue and answer 2 multiple choice questions. The focus here is on identifying clues in the speaker's language or tone across the whole listening text to help identify or infer the attitude, intention, or opinion of the speaker. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the listening component of the Aptis ESOL general test. Okay, so let's have a look at the core or grammar and vocabulary component now. So here's an overview. As you can see, candidates have 25 minutes for this component. Part 1 focuses on grammar, and there's 1 task type there. And in Part 2, which focuses on vocabulary, there are 4 task types. So we'll have a closer look at these now. So in Part 1, grammar, sentence completion, there are 25 3-option multiple choice questions. Candidates have to choose the best word or words to complete each sentence. So A, B, or C, 3-option multiple choice. Most of the questions test grammar as it is used in formal written English, and a small number of questions test grammar as it is used in spoken English, such as knowing the appropriate grammar to use in a particular situation, formal or informal situations, for example. In Part 2, so vocabulary word matching, so that's the first vocabulary task type, candidates have to match 2 words which have the same or very similar meanings. For each of the 5 target words, they have to select the best match from a drop-down list of 10 options. And in vocabulary, Part 2, vocabulary word definition, for this particular task type, there are 5 separate definitions, and candidates have to select the correct word for each definition from a drop-down list of 10 options. And then the next task, word usage, there are 5 unrelated sentences, so the sentences do not form a text, and each of these unrelated sentences has a gap. Candidates have to select the best option from a drop-down list of 10 options to complete each sentence. The correct word will be the most appropriate and plausible option for the context. Okay, and finally, the fourth vocabulary task, word pairs or word combinations, which focuses on collocation, consists of 5 target words. Candidates have to select the word which is most commonly used with the target word from a drop-down list of 10 options. And that brings us to the end of our core component. Okay, so moving on now, let's have a look at the reading component. Okay, so as you can see, in the reading component, candidates have 35 minutes, and there are 4 tasks. Part 1 is sentence comprehension, part 2, text cohesion, part 3, opinion matching, and part 4, long text comprehension. So let's take a closer look. So in part 1, sentence comprehension, candidates need to choose a word from a choice of 3 in a drop-down list to complete a sentence. There are 5 sentences to complete, and candidates don't need to understand all of the sentences to complete each individual sentence. This part assesses candidates' ability to read a sentence and to complete it with an appropriate word. This task is designed to simulate a real-world text, yet it targets an A1 learner. Overall, the text is short, simple, and covers a familiar topic. Again, candidates don't need to understand the entire text to be able to answer the questions. They need to be able to read at the sentence level. Note that the word choices given are not testing grammar or vocabulary knowledge, but focus on which word is most appropriate for the meaning of the sentence. Okay, so moving on to reading part 2, text cohesion, which is an A2 level task. In this part, there are 6 sentences that make a whole text. The sentences have been put into the wrong order, and candidates need to put them in the correct order so that the text makes sense. There's only one correct way to organize the sentences. Candidates have to click on each sentence and then move it so that each one is in the correct position. This part assesses candidates' knowledge of the cohesion of a text. They need to look for clues in each sentence that show how it links to the sentences around it. There are 2 of these tasks in this part. Okay, so moving on to reading part 3, opinion matching. This task targets B1 on the CEFR. In this part, candidates need to match people's opinions to statements. They read 4 opinions on the same topic and 7 statements. Then they need to decide which person's opinion matches each statement. This part tests candidates' ability to read and understand short texts, so paragraph level comprehension. Okay, moving on to the final reading task and the most difficult one, reading part 4, long text comprehension, which is a B2 level task. In this task, candidates have to read a long text of about 750 words and 8 headings in the drop-down lists. The task is to match 7 of the headings to paragraphs in the text. There is always an extra heading that does not fit with any paragraph, which is one of the things that makes this task particularly difficult. This part is designed to test candidates' ability to read and understand a long text. To get the correct answers, candidates need to be able to demonstrate an understanding of how the headings reflect the paragraphs in different ways, sometimes using similar words, sometimes similar ideas, or by sharing a topic. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the reading component. So let's have a look at the last component, the writing one. So in the writing component, candidates have 50 minutes, and there are 4 parts. Part 1 is word level writing, part 2, short text writing, part 3, 3 written responses to questions, and part 4, formal and informal writing. So let's have a closer look. In part 1, word level writing, candidates have joined a club, course, or activity and must answer a series of 5 text messages from other members of the club, course or activity. There is no extended writing in this part, so no sentence writing, just individual words. If candidates are targeting a very high score, they should spend no more than 3 minutes on this part. It targets A1 on the CEFR, focusing on word or phrase level writing, requiring candidates to produce very short answers which need to be clear and intelligible, but spelling and capitalization are not assessed in this task. Okay, so moving on to writing part 2, short text writing. Writing part 2 is a form filling task. In this part, candidates need to write in sentences. If they are targeting a very high score, they should spend no more than 7 minutes on this part. It targets A2 on the CEFR, focusing on sentence level writing, requiring candidates to produce a short answer of around 20 to 30 words, and the type of writing is descriptive or narrative. Okay, so moving on to writing part 3, 3 written responses to questions. In this part, candidates have a social network type interaction. They receive 3 questions and need to respond. If candidates are targeting a very high score, they should spend no more than 10 minutes on this part. It targets B1 on the CEFR, short paragraph level writing, so 30 to 40 word responsive, and descriptive or narrative or expository writing. Okay, and finally, in writing part 4, formal and informal writing, candidates have to write 2 emails. The first one is an informal email to a friend, and the second is a more formal email to an unknown person. Both emails are in reaction to information about a change, and candidates should spend approximately 10 minutes on the email to a friend and 20 minutes on the formal email to an unknown person. It targets B2 on the CEFR, longer paragraph or text level writing, and informal and formal registers. Candidates should write 50 words in the first email and 120 to 150 in the second, and it tests expository or argumentative writing. Okay, so that brings us to the very final task of the final component. So now let's have a look at the Aptis ESOL variants, or different types of Aptis ESOL test. Okay, so we've just looked at Aptis ESOL General, and as you can see, it's a general English proficiency test which assesses levels from A1 to B2 on the CEFR, but if candidates demonstrate a level above B2, they're awarded a C. Okay, so if we look at Aptis ESOL Advanced now, it's also a general English proficiency test. However, it's focusing on higher level learners. Tasks are more complex, and the CEFR levels targeted are B1 to C2. And this test is designed to distinguish between C1 and C2 level candidates. So if you're a test taker that needs to certify a C1 or a C2, this could be the test for you. Okay, and then there's Aptis ESOL for teachers, which is very similar to Aptis ESOL General on design. However, it's been adapted for the educational context. Okay, so again, so the topics, the content will reflect, the kind of educational domain, and again, it assesses from A1 to B2 in a CEFR. But if candidates demonstrate a level above B2, they're awarded a C. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at recognition, okay, of Aptis ESOL in Spain and beyond. Right, so let's briefly look at this. First of all, it's important to mention that Aptis ESOL is recognized and regulated by the Office of Qualifications and Examinations Regulation, Ofqual, which is the government department which regulates qualifications, examinations and assessments in England. Aptis ESOL is recognized by numerous institutions globally. There's a link to a list of institutions that recognize Aptis ESOL globally on this slide. Basically, anything red and underlined is clickable. It's a link to a website. So please feel free to have a look at this after the session. And in Spain, Aptis ESOL was used for teacher certification, university exit, and civil servant exams. Okay, you can find more information about the institutions that recognize Aptis ESOL in Spain on our website. Now, this is really, really important if you're a teacher or a candidate. It's most important for a candidate, obviously, because you'll be taking the test. Before registering for an Aptis ESOL test session, candidates need to check that the particular Aptis ESOL variant is recognized for the particular test purpose at the particular institution. So just to reiterate, click on that link there to check which institutions are recognizing which variant of Aptis for which particular purpose that applies to you, the relevant purpose. So that's really important before booking any test session. And if in doubt, if you've got any questions about recognition and you're not sure, please contact us. Our contact details can be located in this link here. Okay. Again, I'm going to share this presentation, a PDF copy of it, with all the clickable links so you can have access to them. Okay. So moving on now to the final stage of this presentation, we're going to look at some useful links for candidates and for teachers in particular. Right. So candidate and teacher support. So this first slide is dedicated to all the Aptis ESOL candidate and teacher support currently available. As you can see, for candidates, here are some links to the test format overviews for Aptis ESOL General, Advanced, and for teachers. These overviews are designed to help learners or candidates understand and familiarize themselves with the relevant test. And for teachers, there are links to detailed teacher guides for each variant to help teachers understand the relevant test and prepare their learners for it. And finally, here are a couple of links to YouTube video playlists on Aptis ESOL General and Advanced formats and tips. Okay, so moving on. On this slide, there are more links to useful websites and resources, more generally speaking. So the British Council Spain Aptis ESOL page is probably the best place to start, more generally speaking, as you'll find all the Aptis ESOL related content and links to different pages from here. For example, you'll be able to access the recognition in Spain link mentioned earlier from here as well. Secondly, the Aptis ESOL preparation materials. This page again will be of particular interest to teachers and learners, since you'll find links to practice tests for each variant, for example. Yeah, really good to familiarize yourself with the experience of the platform, okay, and to have a go at doing the test. And then the British Council Learning English page is a great place to find resources for learners for all 4 skills at the different CEFR levels. There's also a grammar and vocabulary section, okay? So if you're a teacher or a learner, you can use this to supplement your teaching or learning at the relevant CEFR levels. In addition, there's the BBC Learning English website, which is great learning resources too, would highly recommend it. And then the CEFR self-assessment grid, which can be used to help establish the current level of your learners across the different language skills. So where they are at the moment and where they need to get to. As a teacher, your learners will probably need some help in understanding how to use this, understanding some of the terminology, and developing the skill of self-assessment and being able to reflect on current ability and to work towards a target. Okay, but it's very motivating, and it can be used to develop learning plans for your learners. Okay. And then the final link there, the British Council and Equals Core Inventory. This can be used as a guide for setting communicative objectives with learners for courses and lessons at the different CEFR levels. And you can also use it as a guide for areas of language to be focused on for completing real-world communicative tasks. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I think I'll stop there. And then we can take some questions. Okay.
If anyone wants to make a question, if you can use the questions and answers, or if you prefer to talk, just raise your hand and we will enable your micros.
Sure. I think we should stop the recording now as well.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yep.